Did you know, in 1999, the Blair Witch Project terrified audiences by making them believe they were watching something real? So what happened with the Blair Witch 2016 reboot, which promised to revive one of horror's most revolutionary ideas? Directed as a sequel to the original cult classic, this film had big shoes to fill. The original Blair Witch Project broke new ground with its raw, handheld aesthetic and gradual, nerve-wracking build of dread. In contrast, the 2016 installment abandoned that gritty, improvisational style in favor of a slick, conventional approach. But before we jump into the 7 reasons this film went so wrong, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on Hollywood's biggest missteps. Reason number 1. Loss of originality and the found footage magic. The original Blair Witch Project became a cultural phenomenon precisely because it broke the mold. Its raw, handheld camera work and the eerie suggestion that the footage might be real created an immersive terror that has never been replicated. Yet with Blair Witch 2016, that innovative spark was lost. Gone is the raw, guerrilla filmmaking that made the original terrifying. In its place, a sleek, studio-polished imitation that loses the very essence of what made Blair Witch work. Instead of letting the camera shake and wobble to enhance the uncertainty of every step in the woods, the reboot opts for smooth tracking shots and more traditional framing. And while this might be easier on the eyes, it ultimately undercuts the visceral sense of dread that comes from knowing you're watching something raw and unfiltered. The film feels more like a standard horror movie than an homage to its found footage origins, a far cry from the unsettling realism that made us question if it was all real. Reason number 2. Predictable jump scares. If there's one thing Blair Witch 2016 is notorious for, it's an overabundance of cheap, predictable jump scares. The original built its terror slowly, using atmosphere and sound design to create an ever-building sense of foreboding. Instead of letting suspense simmer, the 2016 sequel relies on a relentless barrage of jump scares, so frequent they become a routine instead of a shock. The problem isn't that jump scares are inherently bad, they can work if executed with precision, but here they seem to be overused and thrown in with little regard for timing or build-up. As a result, the film's supposed moments of terror become nothing more than predictable beats in a poorly choreographed horror routine. This over-reliance on the cheap thrill tactic makes it hard to take the movie seriously, and by the end, you're left wondering if you even blinked between the scares. Reason number 3. Weak story and character development. At the core of any memorable horror film lies a compelling story and characters you can care about. In the original Blair Witch Project, every creak of the forest and every whispered legend was imbued with a sense of realism that made you feel the characters' terror and vulnerability. In Blair Witch 2016, however, the narrative comes across as thin, and the characters are as shallow as a puddle in the woods. The film introduces a new group of young people set on unraveling the legend of the Blair Witch, but their personalities and motivations are left completely underdeveloped. Rather than investing time in building real, relatable characters, the screenplay dumps a series of exposition-heavy scenes that barely scratch the surface of their fears, hopes, or personal stakes. The emotional connections that could have driven the tension are missing, replaced by flat dialogue and unconvincing performances. Without the compelling human element, the scares fall even flatter. When the audience doesn't care about the characters, no number of jump scares or atmospheric dread can really hit home. It's not enough for the film to simply exist in a creepy forest. The viewer needs to feel the terror and desperation of the characters who are lost in it. Reason number 4. Misuse of technology. One might think that in an era of high-tech filmmaking, a modern horror reboot could rely on cutting-edge CGI to create some jaw-dropping scares. Unfortunately, Blair Witch 2016 overuses digital effects in ways that only serve to detract from its authenticity. The film employs CGI to simulate various supernatural elements and eerie occurrences, but the results are underwhelming. Instead of enhancing the tension, the CG effects often appear clunky and out of place, breaking the immersion that true found footage is supposed to deliver. What was meant to be a seamless integration of practical scares with digital polish ends up feeling more like a patchwork of effects that never quite blend with the live-action footage. Furthermore, the average CGI used in key sequences makes the horror feel far less organic. In the original, the fear stemmed from the unknown, the idea that what we were seeing might actually be real. In the reboot, the digital enhancements remind you very much that you're watching a movie, and that realization robs the film of its intended impact. Even the so-called scary creature in the film, which is supposed to be a manifestation of the Blair Witch's power, comes off as a generic, uninspired blob that fails to capture the imagination or evoke genuine terror. The Blair Witch Project thrived on the fear of the unseen. The moment this reboot replaced that ambiguity with glossy CGI, the horror collapsed under its own artificial weight. Reason number 5. the tension that never takes hold. One of the most critical elements in horror is timing, pacing that allows suspense to build, then shatters the calm with a well-placed scare. Unfortunately, Blair Witch 2016 stumbles into this department with an inconsistent tone and erratic pacing that leaves viewers feeling more confused than scared. The film seems unsure whether it wants to be a slow-burn atmospheric horror or a high-octane jump-scare machine. In the first half, you're treated to long, uneventful stretches of dialogue and mundane exploration that hardly evokes a sense of dread. Just when you begin to settle into the unease of the forest, the movie abruptly shifts gears into a frantic, adrenaline-pumping sequence that feels jarring in comparison. This uneven pacing not only disrupts the narrative, but also makes it nearly impossible for the tension to build naturally. Horror thrives on delicate balance. Too slow and the audience loses interest. Too fast and the scares become cheap. Blair Witch 2016 fails to strike that balance. The film's tonal swings are unpredictable, making it difficult for viewers to know whether to laugh, scream, or just sit in anxious silence. Moreover, the pacing issues extend to how the film handles its key plot points. Crucial narrative elements are rushed through without proper build-up, while less important scenes are dragged out, further diluting the overall impact. Reason number 6. Creature and mythology missteps. If there's one element in the Blair Witch mythos that should leave you shivering in terror, it's the unseen, unexplained force behind the legend. In the original film, the terror of the Blair Witch was never about a tangible monster. It was about the pervasive, almost abstract evil lurking in the woods. But in Blair Witch 2016, attempts to give the entity a physical form not only confuse the narrative, but also undermine the very essence of the franchise. Take, for example, the infamous creature in the foot moment. The character's encounter with this inexplicable creature is meant to be a turning point, a hint of the supernatural at work. Instead, it feels like a lazy plot device with no clear purpose. The creature appears briefly, does its minimal damage, and then scampers off into the forest as if it never existed. There's no follow-up, no explanation, nothing to tie it into the broader mythology of the Blair Witch. It's as if the filmmakers try to modernize the legend with a digital monster, but forgot that the real horror of the original was its ambiguity. Additionally, the film toys with time distortion and atmospheric cues. Snippets of "It's Still Dark," rehashed shots of a lightning-struck tree, and inexplicable flashbacks. But these ideas are thrown in haphazardly. What could have been a fascinating exploration of supernatural time loops and altered reality is instead handled with inconsistent execution, leaving the audience scratching their heads rather than immersed in the mystery. Reason number 7. A nostalgic hollowing. Finally, one of the most frustrating aspects of Blair Witch 2016 is its desperate reliance on fan service. In trying to pay homage to the cult classic, the film peppers itself with references and Easter eggs, yet these nods often feel superficial and misplaced. Rather than building a cohesive, engaging narrative that deepens the mythology, the film opts to insert a series of predictable and frankly lazy set pieces, designed solely to evoke nostalgia. The familiar found footage style is replaced by slick conventional shots that, while perhaps technically competent, lack the raw, immersive quality that captivated audiences in the 90s. These callbacks might trigger a brief moment of recognition, a certain creak in the woods or a whisper of the Blair Witch's legend, but they do nothing to elevate the story beyond a tired rehash. Moreover, the overuse of fan service creates an emotional disconnect. Instead of allowing the story to develop organically and building tension through genuine suspense, the film relies on a checklist of nostalgic elements that feel forced into the narrative. The constant reminders of what the original achieved end up highlighting how little this reboot has to offer in terms of innovation or fresh horror. Blair Witch 2016 had the monumental task of following in the footsteps of one of horror's most innovative films, a movie that redefined what it meant to be truly scared. Instead, this reboot has become a cautionary tale of what happens when a franchise loses its creative spark. The Blair Witch reboot didn't just fail to capture the original's terror, it also misunderstood what made it terrifying in the first place. While there are flashes of potential, moments that hint at the original's terror, Blair Witch 2016 ultimately fails to deliver the authentic, bone-chilling horror experience that made the original a genre-defining classic. Instead of forging new paths in terror and innovation, it clings to a tired formula that leaves audiences both disappointed and disconnected. But hey, that's just our opinion. What do you think? Did you find that this reboot missed the mark, or were there elements that still managed to scare you? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's most ambitious and sometimes most disappointing films. This video is made by movie fans for movie fans.